The circus train arrived at dusk. A hulking, rusted thing, it groaned its way to a stop on the edge of town. Silently, tents rose from the dry earth, banners snapping in the wind. It promised a night of wonder, a spectacle of amazement. But the air crackled with something else too, something unsettling. The crowd shuffled in, drawn by the allure of the unknown. Children laughed, tugging at their parents' hands, eager for the show to begin. Above them, a single spotlight flickered to life, revealing a figure perched upon a platform. The clown. His face was a mask of white, painted on in thick, uneven strokes. A grotesque grin stretched across his face, lips painted a garish red. He didn't move. He only stared, his eyes two black pits in the white expanse, boring into the crowd. A shiver ran down my spine. Something wasn't right. The ringmaster, a portly man with a booming voice, announced the first act. But all eyes remained on the clown. He hadn't moved. He hadn't blinked. He just watched, his presence a suffocating weight on the laughter and excitement. Fear pricked at the edges of my joy. This wasn't going to be a normal night. The first act, a troupe of trained poodles, failed to capture the audience's attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd, eyes darting back to the still figure of the clown. He hadn't moved from his spot, his painted smile never wavering. The air grew thick with unease. A child screamed, pointing a trembling finger at the shadows beneath the bleachers. Something moved there, a fleeting glimpse of something grotesque and unnatural. The laughter died down, replaced by a nervous murmur. The shadows shifted again. But whatever lurked within remained hidden. The ringmaster, his usual bluster faltering, tried to regain control of the show, but the audience's attention was fractured, their gazes darting about, searching for the source of their fear. The clown watched, his painted smile unwavering, his eyes reflecting the growing terror in the crowd. The poodles, sensing the shift in mood, began to bark and snarl, their playful act dissolving into chaos. The trainer, his face pale with fear, struggled to regain control of his animals. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The circus, once a place of wonder and excitement, had become a breeding ground for terror. As the night wore on, whispers turned to hushed conversations. Locals, faces grim, shared old tales, legends whispered in the dead of night. This circus, they said, was cursed, haunted by something dark and ancient. Years ago, the circus wasn't much different. A traveling spectacle bringing laughter and joy wherever it went. Until the accident. A fire, they called it, a tragedy that claimed the lives of many performers. Among them, a clown. The very same clown, they said, that now haunted this cursed place. The air grew heavy with dread, every creak of the bleachers, every gust of wind that rattled the tent, sending shivers down our spines. Children clung to their parents, their earlier excitement replaced by a primal fear. The laughter had died completely, replaced by a stifling silence punctuated only by the sounds of our own terror. The clown's laughter, a high-pitched, grating sound, cut through the silence. It was the first sound he had made all night, and it sent a chill through the crowd so profound, so primal, that it felt like the blood in our veins had turned to ice. He was watching us, he was toying with us, and he was enjoying every second of it. I tried to shake off the feeling, the certainty that those cold black eyes were locked on me, but it was no use. Everywhere I looked, every time I blinked, his gaze seemed to follow, boring into me like a parasite burrowing into its host. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. The acts continued, a blur of desperate attempts at entertainment drowned out by the growing fear. The strongman, his muscles trembling, struggled to lift the weights. The trapeze artists, their movements clumsy and uncoordinated, narrowly avoided falling to their deaths. The circus, once a well-oiled machine of spectacle, was falling apart at the seams. I couldn't take my eyes off the clown. He remained on his platform, his body still, his painted smile an obscene mockery of joy. But his eyes moved, darting about, searching, drinking in the fear that clung to the air like a thick fog. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my core that he was looking for me. The heat of his gaze intensified, burning into me, branding me with his attention. I tried to shift in my seat to hide among the other terrified spectators, but it was no use. I was caught in his web, a fly ensnared in the sticky threads of a spider's trap, and he was coming for me. Section 5. Behind the painted smile. A closer look at the clown reveals a haunting truth. During a particularly chaotic act involving a juggling act gone awry, I found myself closer to the platform where the clown sat. He hadn't moved. not an inch. His painted grin remained frozen in place, a grotesque parody of happiness. But as I drew closer, a horrifying detail caught my eye. The paint, caked on thick and white, didn't quite conceal what lay beneath. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface, revealing glimpses of something else, something not quite human. The white beneath the paint wasn't flesh, but a sickly pallid gray. And the cracks, they weren't empty. Something dark and viscous oozed from within, like blood from a wound. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a costume, this wasn't makeup, this was something far more sinister, something monstrous wearing the skin of a clown. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a show, this was real. The clown's eyes snapped to mine, the black pits within seeming to swallow the light around them. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. He knew that I had seen through his disguise, that I had glimpsed the horror that lurked beneath. And in that moment, the smile on his painted face seemed to widen, the red lips stretching impossibly wide in a silent promise of pain. Section 6. Mirror, mirror. The protagonist sees a terrifying reflection of the clown. Panic seized me. I had to get out, to escape this nightmare before it was too late. I stumbled back from the platform, my eyes desperately searching for an exit. But the crowd, caught up in their own terror, blocked my way. I turned, disoriented and desperate, my gaze falling on the distorted reflection of the funhouse. The warped mirrors, meant to elicit laughter, now reflected back a chilling image. The clown, no longer confined to his platform, stood directly behind me. His grin was wider now, a grotesque, impossible thing that split his face nearly in two. His eyes, two black holes in the white expanse of his face, burned with a malevolent glee. He was close, too close. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck, cold and fetid like the air in a tomb. He was toying with me, savoring my terror. I could see it in his eyes, the sick pleasure he derived from my fear. This wasn't about entertainment, this was about something else entirely. This was about power, about control, about the thrill of the hunt. And I was the prey. Section 7. Lost in the funhouse. A wrong turn leads to a terrifying encounter. Driven by pure primal terror, I bolted. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring their cries of protest, their own fear-stricken faces. There was only one thought in my mind: escape. I ducked into the funhouse, the distorted laughter echoing around me like the taunts of demons. The air was thick with the smell of stale popcorn and fear. The mirrors, once a source of amusement, now reflected back my own terror-stricken face, multiplying it 1,000-fold. And then I saw him. The clown. He stood at the end of a long, twisting corridor of mirrors, his reflection staring back at me from every angle. He hadn't moved, but I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he was closer than before. His laughter echoed around me, bouncing off the warped surfaces of the mirrors. It was no longer the high-pitched, grating sound from before. It was deeper now, more guttural, filled with a chilling amusement that sent shivers down my spine. He was hurting me, guiding me deeper into his lair, just as a predator corners its prey. Section 8. Confrontation. Trapped and alone, the protagonist must face the clown. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, the mirrors reflecting my fear back at me, amplifying it until it threatened to consume me whole. I could feel his presence behind me, a suffocating weight that pressed down on me, stealing my breath. I rounded a corner, my heart pounding in my chest, and found myself facing a dead end. There was nowhere left to run. I was trapped. Slowly I turned to face my pursuer. The clown stood a few feet away, his painted smile wider than ever, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. In his hand he held a single wilted flower, its petals blackened and withered, like something from a funeral wreath. "We all float down here," he rasped, his voice a dry, crackling whisper that seemed to claw its way up from the depths of my nightmares. He took a step closer, the flower trembling in his hand. "And you'll float too."